Chapter 9. Your mom and dad sure left in a hurry yesterday. Mesquite jostled my elbow at breakfast Monday morning, making the muffin on its way to my mouth bounce and roll to the end of the picnic table, where we sat at a safe distance from the O'Connell's house. While the sun worked hard to warm the day, I worked harder to keep my cool. Gypsy's puff of curly hair bobbed as she grabbed, too late for the runaway muffin. Between Gypsy and Fedora, there was a gap just big enough for Samson, though if he was sitting between the two girls, I couldn't tell. Rumor was Gypsy could see her spectral brother all the time, but she was the only one. I just did my best not to stick my hand through him accidentally. Yeah, Sledgehammer, Maricel chortled as she branded me with a new nickname. Your folks ditched you and Fee pretty fast. Maricel stopped my muffin before it hit the dirt, levitating it back up to hover over the table. They both have jobs. I bit off my words, trying to keep my temper in check. Snatching the muffin out of the air, I stuffed half of it into my mouth, unable to say anything more. Mom had told me to try and get along. Rocket was working in the garden, and Autry was in the drive, signing for a package that had come overnight delivery. It had been Autry who suggested that Fedora and I both stay. Mom had worried about leaving us. From the start, she and Dad had planned a quick trip. Dad's company was making cuts, and he couldn't risk losing his job by asking for time off. Mom would have quit her job in an instant, risking the mortgage and the car payment, if Autry and Dad hadn't convinced her that a summer in Wyoming might be good for me, and for Fedora too. Relax, Dinah. The kids will be fine, Autry had assured Mom, as she and Dad prepared to leave. How many summers did we spend here as kids? Remember when the Beechams were here with us? We all ran wild, including you. Autry grinned. This place never really did us any harm. You broke your leg here, Autry, Mom stated flatly. Your collarbone, too. You also fell in the river and nearly drowned before Cam Beecham fished you out. The two of you weren't even dry before you wrestled him into a cactus patch and got nearly 1,000 stickers in your... What? Autry quickly cut Mom off. Then he'd winked at me and Fedora. I don't remember any of that. Besides, we have Fee here to keep us safe. My uncle gave Fedora's new brain bucket a thump. Maricel and Mesquite had found an old motorcycle helmet in the attic for my sister, after she gave her football helmet to Grandpa Bomba. Red and orange flames blazed across its scuffed white dome, making Fee as happy as a clam with a showy new shell. She'd been more proud yet when she learned that she, at 8 years old, was old enough to stay at the ranch, while Tucker, at 7, was not. Mom sighed and Dad grabbed her hand, stopping her before she could reach out to comb my hair flat with her fingers. Ledge will never learn to control this thing if you're always doing it for him, Dinah. He punched my arm with his free hand as if to say, right, Ledge? I mustered a reluctant shrug, wishing I could crawl under a rock. A boy's gotta fall a few times so he can learn to pick himself up and put himself back together. Grandpa Bumba wheezed from his armchair in the porch. Stretched at his feet, Bitsy snuffled at Dad's old football helmet. The helmet wobbled next to Grandpa's chair, still packed full of jar lids, reminding me of all the memories of Grandma Dollop I'd destroyed the night before. Seeing Grandpa fumble through a football helmet full of useless lids was like watching someone eat crackers and call it cake. When I turned 13, Grandpa carried on, my savvy opened a crack in the earth so deep I fell in and conked my noodle on the earth's very core. I was nearly a grown man before I found my way back up from the depths in the darkness, and the headache I got lasted years. You should have been wearing a helmet, Fee said, nodding gravely. She was too young to know that Grandpa Bomba had a dozen different tall tales about his savvy birthday. No one knew which were true and which were supersized servings of deep-fried bologna. Mom sighed again. Autry wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Don't worry, Dinah. Gypsy and Samson are staying too. You'll see, Autry went on. A few weeks with us, and Ledge will get his feet under him. Yes, because we can all see how well that plan worked for Rocket. Mom served her words with a hefty side of sarcasm. Autry looked toward the garden, where Rocket was picking pieces of the barn out of the lettuce beds. No longer glowing blue, Rocket had gotten up before dawn. with Autry, Dad, and anyone else who'd been able to stay to lend a hand. He'd repaired the down cables and rejuiced the generator, while the others assessed the damage and tried to clean up what they could of my mess. Nobody let me help. My uncle rubbed his jaw thoughtfully as he considered his oldest nephew. "Rocket's got one last thing to learn about scumbling," he said, "and he's got to figure it out himself. I'm confident he'll find his way off this ranch someday." The thought of someday hadn't made me feel any better. Yet, as I sat at the picnic table with the other kids the next day, I realized that there was a bright side to my forced stay at the Flying Cattle Heart. I tossed and turned the night of the barn disaster, wondering how I'd ever make amends. If I went straight home, Autry might never know how sorry I was about the ruined barn, and I still needed to get Grandma's peanut butter jar back from Sarah Jane. Now, at least, I might have a chance to try to fix some of the things I'd broken. "Hey, Ledge, what if your parents never come back for you?" Mesquite jabbed my elbow again, clipping the wing of my positive attitude. Maricel forged her features into a mask of concern. "If your parents leave you here for good, you'll have to live with Rocket. Permanently. I hope you two can get along. If not, zzz." She play-acted giving her sister an electric shock, then laughed as Mesquite collapsed against the picnic table with her eyes crossed and her tongue sticking out. "You'll be toast, Ledger." Overflowing with mock melodrama, Maricel sniffed, then dabbed her eyes with a paper napkin. I spewed muffin crumbs as a wave of panic hit me. If I ever managed to get home again, I didn't want to show up on the steps of Theodore Roosevelt Middle School, roasted, charred, or extra crispy. The feeling of ants swarmed beneath my skin. The feeling of ants swarming beneath my skin returned, and both my knees hammered up and down beneath the table. I knew I shouldn't listen to the twins, but that didn't stop unwanted, savvy energy from building. As I watched their skit depicting my demise, every crackerjack retort dying on my tongue. I looked from the house to the conservatory to the windmill to the trucks in the drive. With a flash forward, I saw everything in ruins. My savvy may not have made me supersonic fast, but it did give me plenty of steam to vent. And, until I learned to scumble, there was only one way I could think to do it. "I'm going for a run,"